Lawyers of Reddit, at what point, when working for a defendant, did you realize my client is a monster? Not a defendant, but a divorce. Client is a late 30s woman, 2 kids, idyllic suburban life with her, incredibly lucrative medical profession, husband. He caught her cheating. He wanted to patch things up. She decided on a divorce. So far, nothing out of the ordinary, unfortunately. Then I start getting the details. He caught her on his birthday, in their bed, while the kids were downstairs. Dude decided to come home early as a surprise, and his wife was getting dicked down by a 19-year-old. But wait, there's more. Really fun stuff from the husband. Guy had been treated for gonorrhea twice, and both times he had caught it from his wife. The second kid wasn't his. It was obvious because the child was 100% some race, and the dad was not that race. Bad stuff, right? Well, enter the texts, emails, etc. She was carrying on like a dozen affairs at any given time, spanning years. She would bring them home and tell the kids they were electricians, plumbers, etc. She'd frick other guys within minutes of dropping her kids off at school. I've met some awful people in my time, but this woman straight up told me how much this guy loved her and how she manipulated the crap out of him. He knew about a lot of the stuff, and each time he found something new he just tried to win her back. I don't want to go into the details of what happened, but some money that you get you don't really want. That's really sad. I hope that dude found happiness. Basically, he was watching his neighbor through the window in various stages of undress, got worked up. Minutes later the victim showed up at his shop to purchase some food. She was alone. He closed the door behind her and yeah, well that's it. Prick got 25 years for that. That girl was 7 freaking years old. You have no idea how often in our country the mentality of well if I'm worked up and there is a possibility of release close by, regardless of whom or what age or consenting or not that possibility is or might be, I'm entitled to take it, surfaces. Welcome to South Africa. The adverts on TV showing Table Mountain and the ocean is a load of crap. 47 violent murders every day. 1 in 3 of every woman killed is murdered by her own spouse or partner. For those asking what's wrong with allowing the child to choose, the answer is nothing, so long as the child has the maturity and mental capacity to do so and wants to choose. This child had none of those things and was forced to choose right then and there between 2 people the child loved very much. Also, I'm not making any commentary on which spouse was better. They both did this, ergo, they are both terrible. Not a lawyer, but was a paralegal for many years. I worked mainly in family law, as I am sure other posters are doing in order to preserve confidentiality. I am going to be vague and also not include genders or locations. I had a client who was getting divorced. The client and soon-to-be ex-spouse had a 12-year-old son with autism. The 2 of them sat this poor freaking child down at the table one day and made him choose which parent he wanted to live with. Our client called me to gloat that the child had chosen in their favor and to direct that paperwork be prepared. This client was a prominent member of the business community and earned quite a high salary, and was treating this child like a commodity. I was disgusted. I no longer work in law, but this one will always stick with me. One of my close friends is a family lawyer and had a similar situation except in reverse. Both the client and the client's spouse, in front of a judge and in front of their autistic child, took turns arguing why they shouldn't have to have custody. Both of them claiming they are too busy. Their ex is better suited to be a parent. The child clearly prefers the other one more, etc. That poor kid. Had a client charged with bestiality with his pet goat. Pictures of his undies full of goat hair and his bed littered with goat poo was something the like I have never seen in my career. When after the charges were dismissed, he asked me for help getting the goat back. SMH. Found Aberforth Dumbledore's lawyer. Not a lawyer but friend's dad is. He had a 48-year-old manager from a janky sub shop that was trying to sue his 16-year-old employee for defamation after the 48-year-old took the 16-year-old's phone and was looking at the nudes of his 16-year-old girlfriend and attempting to send them to himself. The kid went and told everybody and the manager found out and tried to sue him. Like, you dumb frick. Why would you go and tell a legal team that you got caught attempting to put child pee on your phone? Frick man. A monster and a fricking idiot. Lifelong criminal defense lawyer here. To be completely honest, it's not about the offense but about the person. I've had people accused of murder that I really kind of liked and thought well of. I've had people accused of shoplifting who have given me the heebie-jeebies and seemed like psychopaths. Speaking from purely a criminal standpoint, having a client who is a monster doesn't matter in terms of your duty to them, but it does make the job less pleasant. My worst clients have been people who are comfortable scamming others of their money. Not a lawyer but a client of one I overheard a case of. This woman wanting her US citizenship married an older man who was never hands-on. Basically when the man went to file taxes he had someone do it for him. She made a deal with this person. They transferred his entire estate and accounts to her, but her citizenship hadn't been fully established as this was roughly a week into the false marriage. All of the older gentleman's money and assets were frozen because a foreign citizen owned them. The case is still stuck in legal heck and I don't know what happened later. Murder, robbery, and most crimes involve regular people who did or may have done something stupid due to alcohol or situations. But the clients you keep an eye out are the ones charged with fraud and the like. Liars, cheats and all around shady people generally speaking. Even the gangs operate on a code of conduct. An old-fashioned warlike code of conduct. Honor and courage are important to them even though they commit crimes. 22 years threatened twice. So not that bad. The real danger? Not in criminal law. It's family law. That's where people get really heated. It's personal. Prosecutor here. Most of us in this profession have the utmost respect for those on the other side of the aisle. Most people really don't know or understand the really fricked up crap that we have to witness and deal with on a daily basis. There's a reason attorneys have the highest percentage of alcoholics by profession. I'm a civil litigator. I've never thought my client is a monster, but there are a few I've thought were idiots or liars or both. Two of my favorites are a client who instructed me, against my advice, to object to the temporary judge even though we had just discussed it and I had just told the fricking judge we were okay with him, and a client who testified pretty much the exact opposite of what she had told me in our initial meetings and what we had repeatedly discussed. You can't send me to the principal's office. You're a substitute teacher. Civil defense here, so maybe not as juicy as the crim defense folks. Some of the work I do is employment defense, particularly carnal age harassment discrimination cases. I'm pretty cynical and see a lot of cases where plaintiffs are full of crap, particularly in harassment discrimination cases. In one case I was defending a company and that company's manager. Jointly, the manager seemed like a straight up guy and I pride myself in being a good judge of character. I was pretty convinced the case was just payback from a disgruntled employee. To my credit, the plaintiff, a 38-year-old female, was a really poor employee by all accounts. Still, it didn't prepare me from what I found doing a review of every email the company had stored on their servers. Not only did this guy stick his hand down this woman's shirt without consent, when she threatened to go to HR he said he'd get her fired and make sure she never got a job again. The lady was a single mother with 3 kids. He also propositioned her for fricking in exchange for a day off. He thought the email had been wiped because the company had a 1-year retention policy. Apparently, some of the company's older emails remained on a server before the policy was put in place because of the migration of the emails from an older outsourced IT company. Not sure if my terminology is right here. I had to substitute out of the case thereafter for conflict reasons since my two clients' interests were no longer aligned. Geez, pure luck for that woman. A former teacher told the story of an instance where he was assigned by the court to defend a woman accused of child abuse. When he saw the cigarette burns all over the kid's arms he knew she was clearly guilty but he still had to defend her. He said he's never been so relieved to hear a client found guilty. About 2 months ago one of my clients picked up a statute book off the defense table and knocked me over the head with it during a probation violation hearing. That wasn't a great day at work. Even though I've made a throwaway, I'm going to be a bit vague because I still take my ethical duties to former clients seriously and can't breach privilege or the NDA I signed. This is a story from a long time ago. During the summer after my first year of law school when I was briefly working at a well-known criminal defense firm, The client whose case I was working was one of several defendants charged with conspiracy to commit murder. 3 individuals had committed the murders, and several others had either helped plan it, abducted the victims, came along to watch, or filmed it. In order to see whether our client was one of the individuals present at the scene, I had to watch multiple videos of the murders. I watched multiple people brutally killed in about the worst possible way you can imagine. They were chopped into pieces while they were alive and had their skulls stomped in. It wasn't some grainy security footage. It was HD video taken by bystanders just a few feet away. The video showed someone's brain squirting out of their head and another person screaming as their hands and arms were hacked off. I also had to listen to the audio to see if our client's voice could be heard. The screams were bad. The laughter was worse. It has stuck with me for years and years, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. Thankfully my internship at that firm ended a few weeks later at the end of the summer. I never looked up the sentence from the case, and have no desire to. In our case there was no presumption of innocence. The individuals involved had all taken pleas in hope that the prosecutors wouldn't seek the death penalty. The only thing that would change was whether our client would get the death penalty if he was present filming, or life in prison if we showed that he played a more minimal role. Working in criminal defense meant setting my judgment for people aside so that they could be afforded the rights guaranteed to them by the Constitution. I still did my job to the best of my ability, but I found myself lying awake at night for several weeks in a row, praying to every god that I knew that each of those involved would fry in the electric chair, and that someone would laugh at their screams too. After that internship, I never returned to criminal law. I now practice civil law where I help people recover for wrongs done to them. When I saw the state's discovery file, the video of the SWAT teams entering the residence, blood on the wall, wife's arm cut so deeply you could see all the insides, photos of the bloody blade in the street, then reading their infant had been in her arms when it happened. Yikes. Not a lawyer but my daddy's. He has told me the story of why he stopped being a criminal defense lawyer. He got a case with a couple young Russian guys who were charged with securities fraud. My dad worked super hard on the case and got the guys a great deal with some probation of finance and community service. That night the guys treated my dad to dinner, and on the TV in the bar was a news story about insurance fraud, and one of the guys said, "Hey guys, security fraud is old news, let's try that next," and pointed at the TV. That night my dad came home to my mom and said I can't do criminal defense anymore because he realized the people he was defending were truly bad people. Sometimes it takes something this small to break someone, compared to the others here. Very unfortunate overall. In my hometown, a guy drove to the tallest bridge in the middle of the night and threw his 4 kids off of it. He confessed, saying it was all out of revenge to his wife. He's on death row now. Yup, I hope this hasn't happened more than once, but I helped look for 4 kids a guy threw off a bridge. One baby was found 2 states over, having floated through the Gulf of Mexico. When he told me that both of his biological teenage daughters were lying about him violating them because he refused to let them go to prom, so they were mad at him. I'm a retired correction officer from NYC, Rikers Island. I once had an inmate ask me to look at his case. I had once gotten a 100% innocent guy out of jail when I had just started and I was considered one of the smarter CEOs. This guy shot another man to death at an ATM in Midtown Manhattan during a robbery attempt. It was all caught on videotape. The FBI had computer enhanced one frame from the video in which the suspect's head was in full profile. His right ear was clearly seen and had a very distinctive characteristic. It was sort of square at the top and not rounded at all. His crooked, broken nose was all I needed to say to myself, he's guilty. What fricked my mind up was this pose was telling me he had every right to shoot the victim. He looked at himself as a professional robber. If you resisted, then he felt justified to frick you up. In this case, he shot and killed the ATM customer because he tried to fight back. I couldn't believe how this guy was behaving. Smiling when he told me he was a professional, I went and got a book called Inside the Criminal Mind. It helped answer some questions I had about my new line of work. I have since retired from the NYCDOC and I'm so happy to put all that negative crap behind me. Poe's got 25 years to life. This one isn't as horrific as the murders and CP stories on here, but As a law intern, I had to prepare a defense for a huge gov corporation who had denied employment to a man who applied on compassionate grounds. It's a gov policy where if an employee dies during their term, then their nearest relative, parent, spouse, child, is entitled to get employment in the same company. This man's father had passed away aged 60 after working there all his life, and the corporation was rejecting it on a mere technical issue that there was a spelling error in some of his documents. In a way, this is actually much more terrifying. The people who curb stomp other people while filming and laughing are horrible, but they are extreme corner cases. The corporation denying people benefits on a technicality is something I could see happening routinely. I sat in on a criminal trial without knowing what was going on. Turned out it involved an uncle physically shaming and riding his niece back doors. I only realized this when, less than 5 minutes after I walked in, the government put its expert on the stand and went through blown up pictures of the 5-year-old girl's shitute and fanny to show signs of trauma. Yup. Former juvenile court attorney and was listening to this case. I was not involved, so no RPC issue. 2 minors, both male, had decided to rob a pizza delivery guy, so they called for a delivery pizza to an empty apartment building. The delivery guy arrived and was subsequently robbed. Something like a large pie, his phone and a 2-liter. The minors then decide they want to take the delivery guy's car, so they take his keys. While one is trying to start the car, the other decides to physically shame and assault the delivery guy. Turns out the delivery guy's car was a manual stick shift and the minors have no idea how to drive it. Instead of ending their crime spree, they then kidnap the driver and force him to drive them to their other friend's house across town. Once there, the same minor from earlier physically shame and assault the pizza delivery driver again, then they beat up the delivery driver and run off. Driver makes it into a local shop down the road where he calls police. Adult offenders don't really bother me, but minors, their brains are not fully developed enough to understand the weight of their actions. Kids can be monsters. During a mediation conference, my client bragged about continuing to physically discipline her pregnant teenage daughter, justifying it because her face ain't pregnant. I have learned a lot from this thread, mainly that I should probably go into digital and copyright law. That seems pretty safe. I can usually figure it out from the pre-trial discovery, and in particular the police investigation. Often it is the seized phone or computer that seals the deal. For example, emails showing he repeatedly attempted to prostitute his 2-year-old to men on the internet did it in one case. Not for a defendant, but as a prosecutor at the state attorney's office in Miami. There was this 15-year-old Haitian kid when I was working in the juvenile division that still haunts me. I remember his face even now because he had 2 distinct tattoos on it, with very bloodshot eyes. He was arrested after he ran into police chasing after a teenage girl with a Gatorade bottle. Turns out the girl worked at a gas station and had called the police a week earlier because the boy was sitting outside staring at her. He had came back a week later, walked into the store and stole a Gatorade in front of her without a word, dumped it outside, pushed a patron away and poured gasoline in the bottle, then starting walking back towards the attendant. She freaks out and starts running out the store. He comes in, gets a lighter and starts chasing after her. He runs right into 2 patrol officers and gets arrested. Just looking at him in court freaked me out, which was unusual to say the least. He seemed completely dead inside, showed absolutely zero emotions and didn't say a single word at any stage, even after sentencing. 5 years later, I was watching the first 48 and saw the Haitian kid's mugshot at the end, with the same tattoos, arrested for home invasion and triple murder without motive in Miami. I am a lawyer for people on death row. Although some of my clients have been convicted of horrible, sometimes nightmare-inducing crimes, I honestly have never had the thought, oh, this person is a monster. What I am far more likely to think is :1. How do I convince my child to never try M because M psychosis is freaking real and horrifying? Or 2. I am so lucky to have been born into a family where my parents weren't violent, drug addicted, mentally ill, all of the above. Or 3. Jesus Christ, how differently things may have turned out if my client had had access to mental health services on the outside. Or 4. Wow, this person who was completely dysfunctional on the outside has adapted really well to the structure that her institutional environment provides. Perhaps it's due to my own religious beliefs and to my analytical nature, but the idea that some people are just bad or monsters has never rung true to me, nor has it been borne out by my observed experience. Not me, but my uncle. His client was a diddler, and when my uncle asked him why he did it, the guy said, "Man, she was asking for it." The victim was an 8-year-old girl. Have mostly avoided criminal defense but not family law. Worst was the surgeon with narcissistic personality disorder and a drinking problem. A distant second was the near octogenarian who was getting older ladies hooked on him and getting them to help him move it in his old pickup truck. He gave me the creeps. A judge friend of mine once told me, "Remember, the enemy is the client." Best piece of advice I've gotten in these 20 years. Not an attorney, but a story from an attorney. I had a family member who committed murder. A pretty terrible double murder in the presence of a child. I had to testify against the family member, which meant I had to spend a lot of time with the defense also. The attorney knew the family member was guilty, but God, he was going to mount the best defense possible, and he did. Years later I ran into that attorney and he told me the very first time I sat down with X, he looked me right in the eye and told me things I can't tell you. But I have been a PD for over 20 years and X scared me worse in the first 5 minutes of our meeting than any other client ever had before or since. I know that X told the lawyer that he should have taken out the little B kid that witnessed, and he told him how he should have done it, and for the sake of everyone I won't share that. But yeah, in 5 minutes he knew X was a monster and he still gave him one heck of a defense. Hated him for it, but respected him doing his job. The lawyer did, however, not represent X in any of his appeals. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.